Hello everyone, welcome back to Mr. Lee's YouTube channel. I'm Mr. Lee. We're picking up with Math 0332, Unit 5, Writing Equations. So some of the forms of equations we've seen in the past are slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b, and standard form, ax plus by equals c, which requires fractions to be cleared. There's a third version called point-slope form, which is when you have a slope and you're given a point, you can plug it in here. However, I don't use this so much because I recognize that with y equals mx plus b, if you have a slope and you're given a point, you can plug them in for the x and y here, and I think that that's easier. But you can feel free to use point slope if you would like. I do know your homework mostly has your answers either in slope intercept or standard, or potentially both. They may ask you for them. So we're not going to focus so much on point slope, and I'm going to show you how I handle this when I am doing slope intercept. So find the equation of the lines with the following characteristics, write in slope intercept form and standard form. So when you're given a slope and a point whose x value is 0, what you're really saying is that y equals mx plus b, you know that m is 3. Y equals 3x plus b. And this is an xy coordinate that you can plug in for x and y respectively, which tells you that if I sub in -4 for y and 0 for x, you can see that -4 equals 3 times 0 plus b, but anything times 0 is 0, and 0 plus b will just be b, which tells you that b is -4. Now in your original equation, y and x should just be y and x, but if you have m and you have b, you've got the whole equation. So this gives you the equation y equals 3x minus 4, because this -4 goes into the plus b. Generally speaking, if you have a point whose x value is 0, the y value is the intercept. So this is kind of important. The m value will always be m, but sometimes, like in number 4, they'll make you find the slope. Now, if you've got an undefined slope, what you have to recognize is you've got a vertical line. That means this isn't of the form y equals mx plus b. These are just x equals b lines, where b is not exactly the y-intercept because this thing may not cross the y-axis, but x is the x value of the point. Which means in this one, you ask yourself which one's x and which one's y. X is 3, y is -1. But if our equation is x equals, it's got to be x equals whatever the x value of the point is. If your slope is 0, you'll have a y equals line, and you'll pick the y value of the point. I want you to do C for practice because it's more of the same, similar to A. Only you have a little more work to do when you plug in your x and y and a little algebra, but I'll put it up there in the key. What I want to highlight, though, is if you have 2 points, how you do that. Here now you have to use your slope equation between the 2 points to get m, and then plug in either point to get your b. So if I'm doing my slope, I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. I get 1 minus 0 over 0 minus -3, which is 1 over 3. That's our slope. So I get y equals 1/3 x plus b, because I'm putting it into the equation, y equals mx plus b. And now I can take either point and plug it in to see what b has to be. Now I'm going to plug in the 0, 1. It doesn't matter though. It means y will be substituted for 1. 1 equals 1/3 times 0 plus b, or 1 equals 0 plus b. 0 plus b is just b, which tells you that b is 1. And then this 1 goes back into the equation. So y equals 1/3 x plus 1 is our form for our equation here. Now, whether you're given a slope and a point, or 2 points, or potentially you could be given a line on a graph, you should still be able to manage this regardless what form they're given to you. One thing that I will say is to do slope, we know from our lines. To do rise over run, this is up 1 over 2. So that tells you your m is rise over run, which means your m is 1/2. To find the b, it is your y-intercept, which means you're looking at where it crosses the y-axis. From the looks of it, I would circle it on the graph, but if you're working online, you may not. It looks like it crosses at the point 0, 4, which tells me that 4 is my b. So when I get an equation, it's y equals 1/2 x plus 4. To give you an idea how to do that. Same thing on number 2. We see where it crosses. It looks like it crosses at 0, 9, so that means b is 9. And to find slope, looks like it's going down 4, which is -4, and over 1. So our slope is -4 over 1, which is just -4. Which means our equation should be y equals -4x plus 9. You only have a few of these that are done from a picture. The other part of the Unit 5 Homework 4 is there's several word problems where you have to be able to read bar graphs or line graphs and write their equation, which is very similar to this. But there is one word problem that I figure we should touch on, which is like a fixed cost, kind of like a business application. So the cost y to produce x items is, in some cases, and in the case of this one, expressed as y equals mx plus b, where b is the fixed costs, which you pay no matter what, and m gives you your variable costs, which is the cost to produce an additional item. It costs $200 to start up a business selling campaign buttons, and each button costs 25 cents to produce. Use the above information to complete the exercises below from A to E. So what are the fixed costs that you pay no matter what? They're your b, and they are $200 because it says it costs $200 to start up a business. What are your variable costs? Variable cost is 0.25 because each button costs 25 cents to produce, which really means your m is 0.25, and that will be paired in front of x when we get to the equation. So if they say write an equation for total cost y of producing x buttons, you have y equals, the slope goes in front of x, 0.25x, plus our fixed costs here, plus 200. And once you have the equation, you can start answering questions that'll force you to apply this equation. How much does it cost to produce 800 buttons? Well, we know from this that y is our cost and x is our buttons. So this is telling us x is 800, and we really just need to plug it in. Y equals 0.25 times 800 plus 200. Now this is 1/4 of 800. So that should be 200 plus 200, which is $400. So to produce 800 buttons, it cost us $400. Now, x is not our only unknown in this equation, because x and y are paired together. They could ask you a slightly different question, and we'll see how it changes things. If you spend $350, how many buttons did you produce? So they're telling us the cost is $350, so they're telling us y is $350 in that equation. So $350 equals 0.25x plus 200. They want to know how many buttons did you produce, so x is our unknown because x is buttons. When you solve for x, you'll subtract 200 to get 150 equals 0.25x. Divide by 0.25. Dividing by 1/4 is really the same as multiplying by 4. I'll just tell you that straight up. So I'm going to take 150 and multiply it by 4 to find that x is 600 buttons. So if you spend $350, you'll get 600 buttons. If you wanted 800 buttons, it'll cost you $400. And there are various other word problems, like I said, that'll have you read a graph, tell you a slope or an intercept. But most of them are kind of similar, or will draw some lines for you, or have you potentially read a bar graph. But this is really all for the 4th homework assignment in Unit 5. And in our next video, we'll deal with how we graph inequalities. And that will be the last section in Unit 5.